Time now to take a look at what's grabbing the headlines here in France. Flo's here to do that. Hi, Flo. And we're starting with that debate, that first French televised primaries debate last night for the Les Républicains, the Conservatives Party. And we'll start, I guess, fittingly, with a right-wing paper, Le Figaro.
That's right. Was Le Figaro impressed? That's the question. Well, Le Figaro thinks the debate was a little too tame for their liking. Let's take a look at their front page. They're talking about un débat à fleuret mouché. That's a little bit of a highbrow headline. Essentially, Le Figaro says the 7 candidates were dueling with a bit of rubber on the end of their swords. So it wasn't as, I guess, dangerous as Le Figaro was hoping it would be. It was very polite. There were no mean personal attacks like you might have expected. They stuck to the real issues and essentially just spent the time defending their programs.
And Le Figaro is quite impressed by the candidates, particularly on the economic front.
That's right. Le Figaro in its editorial says, never before has the right been so on target and so clear about its economic program. Regardless of the candidate, there was a clear message, which was we need to start tackling the obstacles that are putting the brakes on the French economy. It seems that thanks to François Hollande and his terrible economic policies, the right has finally woken up. What we're seeing is calls for a renaissance, a comeback. And you can see here in the title of Le Figaro, it's saying, Vivement l'alternance. Le Figaro just can't wait for the change of power.
And I'm going to take a guess here that the left-wing press is not quite as excited about this change.
That's right, but what's interesting is the left-wing press is disappointed for the same reasons that Le Figaro was. Essentially, it was too tame. Let's take a look at L'Obs, for instance. They say, we have 7 candidates here who can't stand each other on the same stage. They were really hoping that the gloves were going to come off and the sparks were going to fly, but no. L'Obs says, put up the popcorn. There was no blood. There were no tears. Everyone was on their best behavior, and suddenly, you can see in the headline here, everyone loved each other. It seemed like it was one big happy family. Now, Libération agrees the debate was too shiny, too polite, too calculated in a way. There were no real exchanges, according to Libération. And Libération says it's unlikely this debate will actually shake things up and change the kind of power relations between the 7 candidates.
And of course, the big question is who came out on top, who won. Le Parisien has graded the candidates. So who's the winner?
Well, Le Parisien graded the candidates according to 5 criteria. Precision, style, whether or not they were respectful, fair play in French, who used the best catchphrase of the night, and who fought the hardest. And it turns out, according to these calculations, that Alain Juppé came out on top, according to Aujourd'hui en France's calculations here. He came out, he got a grade of 7 out of 10. According to Le Parisien, he was a calm force, very smooth. Nicolas Sarkozy was right behind him. He got 6 out of 10 points. He was a little bit more tense. Now, this is the cartoon in Aujourd'hui en France, Le Parisien, which I guess says that François Hollande was also paying very close attention to this debate. You can see him saying, a candidate shouldn't say that. And you can see his Prime Minister, Manuel Valls, there saying, don't draw attention, François. Now, this is a reference to a book that came out this week. It's called Un président ne devrait pas dire ça. A president should not say this. It's actually a series of interviews that has, I guess you could say, sparked a little controversy here.
Well, Hollande has received quite a lot of criticism for that kind of tell-all book. It's written by 2 Le Monde journalists. He came out quite strongly on the justice system in that book.
That's right. And this is, there were several controversial things in that book, but this one really didn't go down well. Let's take a look at an article in Le Monde which talks about the reactions to these comments. What did Hollande say? Well, he really lashed out at one point against the justice system. He said it's a cowardly institution. So that's pretty incredible. He also talked about prosecutors and magistrates. Some of them hide away, they pretend to be virtuous, and actually they dislike politics. Now, as you can imagine, people who work in the justice system don't really like being insulted. And so they really didn't like this book. You can see Le Monde saying his reputation amongst magistrates has been somewhat wasted.
Not a surprise. And it's not the only subject that he came out on in that book. Libération talks about another one, and they say his entourage is stunned.
That's right. Libération says that Hollande is free-falling. And it's a very interesting article. It reports on his entourage, because a lot of people are wondering, why did he make all these controversial comments? It really wasn't necessary. And there is this presidential election that's looming, and he's, not very well liked in France right now. So perhaps it wasn't the best time to make these controversial comments. It's a communications shipwreck. That's what one of his close aides said. Self-sabotage that comes right as, he hasn't even said whether or not he's going to be running for president. So this isn't probably going to help him very much. And this article quotes another heavyweight. I love this quote. It says, "We were already at the bottom of the sea. I didn't think we could get any lower. Now we're even below the Titanic."
Oh my gosh, that is really quite condemnatory. And finally, we'll move on to something a little bit different, away from the French politics, this time to the Nobel Prize for Literature, and papers are celebrating Bob Dylan's win.
That's right. Le Figaro calls Bob Dylan a literary rock star. Now, what you need to know is Bob Dylan is indeed a rock star in France. He's a huge star. Libération, for instance, has a 13-page special today on Bob Dylan. They talk about knocking on Nobel's door. According to Libération, the counterculture icon has brought his art to new heights. They really celebrate his whole work of art today in their paper, 13 pages, as I said. Now, other papers are a little bit more measured, it must be said. L'Humanité, for instance, the communist paper, says, look, this was a real surprise. We weren't really expecting Bob Dylan to win this prize. Now, L'Humanité appreciates his art, but they wonder if he was the right choice for this very prestigious prize. It seems like literature has kind of taken the back seat over who actually gets this prize, and L'Humanité regrets that it wasn't actually another author, the Franco-Syrian author Adonis. They say that when he writes a book, well, it really changes things. He talks about peace in the Middle East, he talks about the future, and so they wonder, why did Bob Dylan get it and not this author who is actually changing things with his work of art?
So certainly a mixed bag in terms of the reception for Bob Dylan's prize there. Flo with the press review. Thank you very much for that. Flo Villeminot, who will be back in 2 hours' time with the International Press Review. And we're going to take a short break now, but I'll be back in just a minute with the rest of the programme. Do stay with us.